Hi.
Hello, hello.
Oh,
It's
wait,
so
I can't
nice
hear
to
you.
meet.
Hang on one
Oh,
second.
okay.
Okay. How are
Testing,
you?
testing. I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, awesome.
Excellent, excellent. It's so nice to meet you. Is it Elise?
You too. Yes, it's Elise. Yay. Okay, well, I am so grateful that you decided to come on.
I'm thankful for you. Thank you for coming on to mine when we get there.
Yes, awesome. And it's Laurel, correct?
It is, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Wonderful to meet you.
And
So,
I love your name. My middle name is Elise.
is it really?
Yeah, that's why I was like, is it Elise? And I spelt it out. Mine is spelt different too.
Oh, okay. How do you spell it?
Illyse.
Oh, I've never heard that. That's pretty. I like
Is
it.
that fun?
Awesome. Well,
I
I'm
love
gonna.
orange, by the way, too. Okay, now I'll
Oh,
stop interrupting
thank
you.
you. Oh, it's okay. I'm really bad at like kind of talking and interrupting. I have to get used to that.
It's been a
Um,
practice
yeah.
for sure. Is it my first, because I recently launched my pod, so
Yeah.
been gathering, like, I launched, but I have like 10 episodes already, like, in the barrel and ready to go.
Yeah.
But I watched myself get better at just doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because after the first, like, three edits, I was like, all right, bitch, I need to shut the fuck up.
Me too. I'm so glad you said that because I had an episode with somebody and I read people's faces really well. And this person kept being like, "Is this about me or you?" And I was like, you just like to talk. And I saw that you refer to like neurodivergence as neurodivine. So we're in the same club, honey. And I think that's part of it.
It really is, though, because it's like, I see you, is what it is. It's like, I
Yeah.
see you, I relate to you, you're not alone, I understand you. And I think that when we've grown up, I'm going to speak very generally, but we've grown up very misunderstood.
Oh,
As
yeah.
very misunderstood people. So it's almost like, as a counterbalance, we subconsciously like really want to make sure other people don't feel like we're not understanding them, which
Yeah.
then of course ends in us interrupting them to be excited
Exactly.
and make connections. Yeah.
So, funny little quirk, my washer is making a really loud noise. I'm going to run and turn that off.
Sure, I can't hear it at all, but
Oh, if you can hear them.
if it's gonna catch on your audio, then obviously like turn it off.
Yeah, no, I think if you can't hear it, it's okay. And I also, when I run it through, I have a thing that takes that background noise. So we should be good as long as you
Yeah,
stay
you keep doing your laundry, babe. It's
Yeah.
Sunday, it's laundry day.
Awesome. I knew we would get along. I've been following you for a while and I love the sass. I
Thank
love
you.
all of that. And so when you made that post, I was like, I'm interested. I love this girl.
I was so glad that you got there so soon. I didn't expect it to not like gain some traction. I didn't expect it to gain as much traction as it did. So now
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, I can't host all of you right now. Ah, but you jumped in really quick. So I was able to be like, yep, yep,
What
yep.
a blessing. Thank you, Jupiter, right?
For real. Thank you, Jupiter.
Awesome. And I do want to say congratulations on your podcast as well, because I have kind of checked some of it out. Really awesome. I
Thank
even
you.
just the whole everything behind it, kind of looking into people's charts and like what they do and how it aligns. I'm obsessed with that stuff, obviously. And I think it's just an amazing premise. So congratulations. It's already doing well. I hope it continues to do
I
well.
hope so too. I think it will.
I
It
do too.
really arrived. It
Yeah.
arrived formed. Like it was like it landed and it was like, I am your podcast. Here's my presence or my premise. Here's
Yeah.
my name. I was like, can we negotiate the name? Because I know there are other podcasts with this name. And it was like, no, this is our name. And I was like, oh, all right, all right. And then it also gave me the date. Because like as an astrologer, I want to pick a good day,
Oh,
obviously.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
I was like thinking when the idea arrived and everything, I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, this is gonna be great. And I was like, the astrology's fucking shit right now. I'm like, what am I gonna do? And then it was like, you're gonna release me on this day. And I was like, are you sure? Are you really,
Right?
really
Like for
sure?
real? Really?
Because it chose the Mars Uranus conjunction day.
Ooh.
Yeah, it chose like the day, like, and I was like, okay, we'll let it be what it is.
Yeah.
And, just knowing that everything happens in spectrums, I was like, well, this does fit. It's like a launch of something
Yeah.
new. in a interdisciplinary, interconnected space like astrology and an Aquarian, a Uranian
Yeah,
sign.
it's like crash, boom, here it is.
Exactly. And that's kind of how it's been putting it out. Like it's not like 0 to 1,000 fucking like million followers or anything like that, which is
Yeah.
good. My nervous system isn't ready for that level of like 0 to 1 million.
Yeah, it will be
um
though. In time.
I think that we are.
Yeah.
I especially after that post, I have episodes lined up. Like I'm booked out for interviews for the next 2 months, and those episodes will go on air in May. Some of them in May.
Yeah, I
And
saw
so
that.
I'm like, oh my God, am I doing that? I was part of me is like, you should fucking stop taking people right now and just like catch up, let things
Yeah.
happen. But it's nice because it does give like a runway almost of time for me to be like, okay, by the time some of these people's episodes are coming out, we not only get to like
Yeah.
settle in, like navigate your nervous system. I've already noticed it start to shift quite significantly. Because I've had people, some of the people who reached out from that post have like over 100,000 followers in their audiences and like multiple 100,000s across platforms. And I'm like, okay. And I know that even like a few weeks ago, me would have been like, and
Yeah.
now I'm like, yeah, of course they do. Of course they're volunteering. Like, duh. And
Like
then low key, I'm like, okay, but we need to make sure that we got that we're good.
that's exactly what I was gonna say, is that basically just prepping your nervous system. And if you're already doing that, it's like get ready because the universe does not give us anything that we're not prepared to output, I guess you could say. And so it's like even if you don't feel it like in your body, make yourself like get there because obviously what you have is, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I fumble over my words all the time. What you have is worthy for that, I guess, is
Yeah.
not exactly what I'm trying to say. Worthy isn't the word I mean, but I think you catch my drift.
No, I do. It's
Yeah.
like I don't know what to call it either. So it's like I really do believe that when we sit in with people, especially if it's two fucking like practitioners, two little neurodivines sitting together, we tap in to each other. So it's like I don't
Exactly.
know the word for it either. I've been calling it the vehicle. Like I think it's
Yeah.
a vehicle
Yeah.
for my authority and credibility and the community because I really want it to be like I want it to become like this networking thing
Yeah.
for people, which I saw other people on that post that got because that was the first time I'd ever asked publicly for people. Everyone else I've just been like, hello, hello, hello. Like, do you
Yeah.
want but then I saw some other people reference the post and be like, this was awesome for connecting to other practitioners
Yeah.
with. And I was like, oh fuck yeah, that's awesome. So like even if you don't get on my like this calendar right now, like at least you're connecting with other people who can appreciate what you're doing and witness you in it, you know?
Yeah, and I love that too. I am a big like support kind of girl, and so I love like the networking, the community because it's like I want to take everybody with me if I could, you know? And so it's like I love when I meet other people who have that same mindset because support people. Like there's no reason not to, you know? Everybody has something to offer and we literally elevate consciousness when we're doing that, you know? But we've already started chit-chatting and going, but I wanted to, because I know about your podcast, but for anybody listening, if you will, kind of share a little bit about your background, yourself, and your new podcast.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we jumped right on into this. Well, hello everyone. I'm Laurel Kassor. I am the host of the new podcast Made for This with Laurel Kassor, Astrology from Abstract to Impact. And I can't be more excited about it. It's kind of become my like soul hyperfixation in the last several weeks. But it is a podcast that is like half storytelling and half live astrology reading. And so the idea is that I have on other spiritual practitioners, creatives, educators, who really have done a lot of the work that their birth chart has asked them to do, that their life has asked them to do, and turned that into something really powerful and lucrative that they kind of pour from a full cup from. And as we learn about them and their work, I have them tell us their story of honestly, it's a lot of it. Let me say it like this. When I started doing this podcast, I had an idea. I was like, I know it's going to be life stories and astrology mixing together. but I learned a technique when I was in my astropsychology master's program. And it was, he called the professor is Glenn Perry. He calls it the developmental age method technique. And long story short, basically, he came up with a way of plotting out where planets fall in a person's birth chart is associated with different like physical ages that you move through. And so depending on where a planet falls in your chart kind of tells you something about where these like formative plot points are in a person's life. And basically when you arrive at a planet, you're the native or the individual whose chart it is, it's kind of like they meet, finger quotes, that planet for the first time through their consciousness, wherever their consciousness was at. So, like, I'll give myself as an example. The first, the very first planet that falls in my birth chart is actually my Ceres, and she's on my ascendant. That's in my system, I treat her as the ruler of Taurus energy. I have this whole 12 planet system I can talk about in a second. But long story short, in my eyes, that planet has a lot to do with tangible tangible things, resources, security, not necessarily like feeling safe, but like actually like being rooted, grounded, stable, anchored. I associate it with the pillar I call the anchor pillar, pillar two, anchoring. Anyway, I was 2 weeks late I was 2 weeks late past my due date, and there was no sign of me budging. I was very comfortable right inside of my mama's womb. And they had to go in and with a C-section and actually like physically pull me out because I was so unwilling to budge. Now remember, this planet I associate with all things Taurus and Taurus energy. And Taurus, the number one finger quote problem you'll hear a heavily Tauran person say is, I feel stuck. I feel stuck. I feel stuck. I can't move, right? Like, because it is about the density. Right. And so it was really interesting that that's like the first planet in my chart. It has to do with like, I'm not leaving. You actually have to come in and retrieve me. If you want me to budge, you have to come and move me yourself. And so that's just like obviously a small one, but the next one, I was a year old. And so, or about a year old, and it's Pluto. So it was the first time I ever met Pluto, who is a planet that has a lot to do with scary things, rebirth, life and death type of things, like very, very intensive, extreme, shadowy, kind of dark stuff.
Yeah.
I met that energy when I was like one, like 1.5 years old. And it wasn't until I was fast forward. It wasn't until I was like in my early 30s in this astrology class that I was taking with this professor when I volunteered, my Aries ass volunteered. I was like, yeah, do it on me. I'll try it. And he like was like, oh, what happened when you were about one? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, you should go ask someone if they do, because it would be relevant and really important. And so I did. And my mom was like, oh, that's when you had surgery. And I was like, oh, okay, tell me about that. And then my mom was like, oh, well, you had this blood blister situation develop under your eye. And I could tell it was really messing with your confidence, even though you were so, so young, like other kids and other adults would like point and like she was like, I'm your mother. I know. I knew. I could tell. I could tell that it was hurting your confidence. And so the thing was, I was so young, and my mom was a nurse, but she couldn't get any of the doctors she worked with to operate on me because I was so young. And they were like, "We can't put this baby under anesthesia." She was like, "I understand." So for like 6 months from the time that blood blister like arrived under my eye, and it was painful. My parents had to overpower me and hold me down and like ice my eye. But to an infant, that's torture. Like that might as well be torture. Even though they were trying to help me, there's no way a baby would could understand that. It was like these people who love me and cuddle me and feed me and nurture me and like what? and they are hurting me and they are dominating me and I am like being overpowered and controlled, and it was obviously very scary to little one. And eventually I did get the surgery, and my mom was like, "Oh yeah, and then you looked dead on the table." And it was so scary and I was so afraid and like, oh my God, it was so bad. I was like, "Mom, I probably like felt that." Like inner baby child me probably like felt the fear of all of this and couldn't logic it out. And so it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I received this information that suddenly I was able to look back in hindsight and be like, oh my God, what a fucking formative event this was. That people always have some ulterior motive, that there's stuff going on that you can't actually see because I couldn't figure out. So it became like this, I assume now as I've done some work around it, like it was a really scary time in my little baby life that taught me and it had me internalize something about like my relationship with my parents. My Pluto is in opposition to my Venus in Taurus. That had me really realize that if you want to gain, I guess, on some level, confidence, that you have to be willing to get hurt in some way, because Pluto is also an aspect to my sun as well. And so the idea with, and I share all this because the idea is that when you meet that planet, one, it sets a template up in place for you to start working out what I call in the birth chart your soul syllabus.
Okay.
And then it also activates any planet it touches. And you meet that planet through the lens of the original one. So, like for me, the first time finger quotes, met my sun energy, so the energy that has to do with choices and validation and recognition and performance and just shining and being who you are, was through the scary lens of like, oh, something must be destroyed in either for that to happen. We have to be willing to be scared. We have to be willing to go deep. We have to be like that. Somehow that set up that template for me, right? And so anyway, we go through the chart, like hitting the plot points to understand what did these things spark in you? How did they connect to these other planets in your life? How did you experience them in real time? Because that's really the juiciest. I mean, the interpretations are fucking juicy, but the juiciest juice is understanding that astrology is not something that happens to you. It is something that happens through you. You are the vehicle through which these energies transpire. Like, and they don't determine your life, they set parameters up for experiences to unfold. So when we get to hear about the different ways that people have in real time for real experience these energies, we're not just seeing like, holy shit, we really were made for the work that you do because you have been practicing this on some level your whole life. But also, we get to understand that, like, just because someone has this placement doesn't mean it's always going to be good, bad, whatever, binary. Like, there's so many different ways energy can combine and fold in. I often think of the birth chart and just all astrology as like a kaleidoscope. It's just like the same beads, the same colors are in it all the time. But when you turn it, when you look at it differently, it's going to change what you see in it. And so that's the premise. I know I gave you like the most long-winded possible way I can do that with the
I'm
podcast. That's
fascinated.
the premise of the podcast, is to really demonstrate like you are made for the work that you're doing. You've been practicing your whole life. Your life is your market research. And we get to demonstrate that astrology isn't something that's just personality based. It really is this equation for your consciousness, but it doesn't happen without you. Like you are essential to the process of experiencing your own birth chart. So that's the that's the long short.
I love it. And I think I love how much in depth you went because I actually wasn't aware of the depth of the premise. So I knew that it was, tracing what you do and connecting it to the stars and all of that. What I really love about you too is that we share the same perspective and viewpoint when it comes to astrology not being fatalistic. Because I
Mm.
think for me, in my opinion, one of the things that I come across a lot is that people dismiss astrology or they kind of almost like belittle it because they're like, I'm not blaming my mood on the planets. That's a scapegoat. And it's like, it's a little deeper than that. In addition to that, I also think it's like what you said. You described it beautifully, like the kaleidoscope. I love that description. But I think that planets express in different ways. And we are also able to control that expression through how we, for me, the way I look at it is work with our healing, you know? And so it goes back to what you said. Everything that's happened in your life up until the point that you're at now has prepared you for what's written already. You know, you were created in line with what those stars say, but there's different expressions, and whether you choose to work on it or you don't work on it, you're going to get there some way. It just might take you longer. You know, if you want to let Saturn show his shadow side in your life, or you want to let Saturn say, hey, this is what you need to work on, you're like, all right, I'm with you, Saturn. You know, and so it's like, it takes away the fatalism from it, I guess is what you could say. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I love that we share that viewpoint. If you want to elaborate on that some, you can, and then I've got more questions
Absolutely.
for you, so you go right ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I completely agree. Obviously, you're like, I agree with you. And I'm like, I agree with you. No, but you're so right. There's so much agency in astrology. And it's like I'm at a point where I really, I don't try to convince people anymore. I haven't tried to convince people for a long, long, long time. Now, on threads, I will cut up.
I love it.
Will poke fun and I will like show up on the astrology isn't real post, but I do it with a lot of humor and I do it for my girlies, like always, it's always to make my girls laugh. Um, but the thing about astrology, I think that so many people just don't witness yet, is that again, it's back to this equation thing. I'm going to elaborate a little bit on that. So, one of the other reasons my podcast exists, aside from what we just shared already, is because back in January of 2025, I got a download. But it wasn't just a download, it was like a celestial software update, is what I've taken to calling it. It was literally like the universe uploaded me with a zip file and it was like have fun have fun going through all that shit. But the words, okay, so two parts about this story. I was literally walking down Foresight Drive. That was the name of the street that I was walking down, Foresight Drive, when I got this bolt from the blue, like straight to the dome, electrifying like thing. And in that came these words just like landed in my hands basically, and it was just quantum astrology. And I was like, what the fuck is that? I know a lot about astrology, but I don't know nothing about no quantum. So I ran my butt home and I got on the internet and was like, quantum astrology. Because the last time I had a big fat download like that, I received the word psychological astrology, which then led me to my 2 years master's program. And so I was like, oh, cool, more to learn, like more study. Like I'm gonna go find, like in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna find a program about this and I'll learn about it. And I really couldn't find anything, except for like a couple books like written by Rick Levine in like the 60s or 70s. Shout out Rick Levine, good old boy astrologer. Um, but not a good old boy, just like an old boy astrologer. I was like, oh wait. Hold on. So I found the Rick Levine books, and then I found like an article that was like, when will the metaphysics stop appropriating the sciences? And I was like, oh fuck that. And then I was like, oh my God, no, I've gotta figure this out. What? So I looked up quantum theory. Still feels kind of funny to say it, but like I was like, what the fuck? Okay. Well, what's quantum theory? Give me quantum principles. I'm not a math girly, like I'm an English girly. So I was like, what can we learn without diving into all the mathematical parts? Like what has the math taught us? So I started to learn so much about that. And the whole time I started reading it, every principle, I was like, this is astrology. This is astrology. This is how astrology operates. At this point, I was 13 years into my craft. And so I was like really confused on one hand. I was like, what do you mean quantum physics? What? This is what? And then I just kept kind of following the hunches. And so that led to basically almost all of last year was this unpacking of that zip file that I received. I call it the sometimes I like to call it the cosmic slab of marble that I was delivered, and it was just like this whole year of like chisel, 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 chisel. And in that process, the whole time I was like, I'm not trying to reinvent the zodiac wheel. I don't want to step on anyone's toes. I have a lot of wounding around intelligence stuff. Like I think I'm a smart person, but being a neurodivergent person growing up, I had a lot of wounding around like, am I smart? Like, will people listen to me? Do I have good insight to give? I most of the time did, but it wasn't until much later until people would realize it, you know. So there's just a lot of imposter syndrome. I would know also being like a little oracle, an oracle child, but not being validated in any way around what I would know for no reason really fucked with my confidence around like trusting my own ability to know things. And so as I was moving through this process, I was like totally not validating myself. I was like, you're gonna fuck up astrology. You're gonna get outcasted from this from like the community. People, no one's gonna believe that you know what you're doing because you're finger quotes breaking the system here. And it was really tough, but this like seed inside of me would not let me stop. So I moved forward, just being like, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just gonna see what happens. And as I got further into the process of basically flip-flopping as above and so below and macroscopic and microscopic, I was like, it was I can't even explain to you what was going on in my brain during February of 2025, which is Aquarius season, where
Oh,
we had
okay. I can imagine.
Pluto in Aquarius for the first time while the other planets were also moving through Aquarius. I am a Aquarius icy Saturn moon conjunction
Say that
up
again.
front.
Oh, okay, okay. Saturn.
So the icy Saturn and my moon are all teamed up, piled up together at the beginning of my fourth house. So 4 degrees, 5 degrees, 7 degrees is icy Saturn moon.
How did you
And
handle that? Going through that with the Aquarius at that time and then having those placements, that seems like a lot and pretty heavy, and I would think I was losing my mind.
I did. In addition to the placements I just named, I also have Jupiter in Leo conjunct my MC at 3 degrees Leo and 4 degrees MC, respectively. So, as all of that shit was happening during Aquarius season, not only was Pluto activating my foundations, the IC, my authority and structures and rule systems, Saturn, and my inner sense of acceptance and belonging and nurture and emotional safety, my moon. Pluto was like haunting the fuck out of them and basically was like, I'm gonna destroy all this shit. It was also activating by opposition my Jupiter MC at the exact same time. So it was also being like, you think you know these things, but I'm about to fucking dismantle your worldview and crack you the fuck open. And so all that was happening in February, plus the personal planets were like walking their way through and activating everything. So you are 100% correct. I felt fucking insane because I was just kind of this open channel at that time for stuff that I understood but could not put into words yet. I had no words for it. And that was the hardest part, I think, for me. And it really does go back to like some of my intelligence stuff because I was born half deaf. I wasn't done cooking, by the way. That's why I was so like, I'm not leaving my mom's womb yet. I was born half deaf. My ears weren't finished developing. So I had speech impediments and stuttering, and like I lisped and was in speech therapy until I was like 7 or 8 or whatever. So there were multiple factors kind of all coalescing there where it's like, oh my God, this genius level shit was happening inside of me and I couldn't put it into words. And I was like, oh, I'm losing my mind. And my boyfriend was a blessing. He was like, well, you seem really grounded in the fact that you're aware that you might be losing your mind. So I don't think we need to worry yet. I was like, okay,
I
you're
mean, you're
right, you're
laughing.
right.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say
So
you're laughing about it and everything, but it's like that really happens. And it's really good to have somebody tell you that, hey, when you have the self-awareness, that literally is the thing that keeps you sane.
it
Because,
was.
anyways, go
No,
ahead.
no, keep going, keep going.
No, it's just the thing that keeps you grounded because I've had moments like that where I have these epiphanies or I have these um very strange things that happen to me, very spiritual experiences, and I went through a period where I thought I was losing my mind. What I love about astrology is that for me learning about astrology came after that. So now when those things happen and I get downloads kind of like what you described, the groundedness that you get kind of from astrology and knowing what's happening, you're like, okay, I'm not crazy. Do you still have to work with that stuff? Of course, but at least you know you're not crazy. And one thing I wanted to say, I'm very surprised to hear about the intelligence thing. I understand it now that you gave the background, but the first thing I saw when I look at your page is, oh my gosh, she's like a genius. So no, seriously, like I was telling somebody I was when we were preparing for this, I said, yeah, she's really, really smart. I can't wait to talk to her. So it's just
That means
interesting
so
how
much.
that
Like it
plays
really
out.
does. It's very healing. It's very full
Oh,
circle.
it shows.
It's a testament. It's fun. It's been really meta. Like this whole thing of like getting this download and working out a system and then finding the ways to communicate about it and making it logical and digestible for other people to not just like receive, but see themselves in and relate to and identify. And then even many of them have adapted into their practice. And I'm like, holy shit, this is like a culmination of my childhood story in so many ways. Like this is, and that's what I'm hoping to do with the podcast is show like how over the years we put in the work that is assigned to us through the syllabus. And when we really, I mean, you know, put in that hard effort that you can pull out of these things on the side where it's like, well, you wouldn't be able to do what you did if it were not for the hard bits that you had to contend with, you know? So that's like, thank you, deeply received. I've done a lot of work around like being even able to receive compliments like that. So I really appreciate it. And yeah, this work was really critical in doing that. And so it was really scary for a little while. Like January and February and the beginning of March were very wonky. I remember I'll never forget the time I was crying in the shower with my partner. I was sobbing. This was like maybe a few days after I got my download, and I could already see the connections and I knew I was onto something real, but I also knew that like I was an astrologer with no following. Like no one knew who I was. Um, I was scared of visibility. I was terrified of being like called out for hurting the system that I love and gave me so much because astrology really was once I found it when I was a little before my 21st birthday and started studying it, it became a lifeline to navigating the world for me. And so I remember just crying and crying and crying in the shower, and he was like, "What? Are you okay? What's going on?" And I was like, "The quantum physicists are never going to listen to me." And he was like, "Laurel, it's okay. It's okay. You don't need them to listen to you yet. Like they one day you keep working at it, girl, and they will." And I was like, okay. So during that time, it was just a lot of fear, a lot of Pluto stuff. It was a lot of Pluto stuff coming up and really like pulling everything I was afraid of right up and being like, if you want to make the impact you want to make, you have to face this shit. And I was like, okay. So fast forward a little bit, I start allowing myself some permission to play with the ideas. And one of the big things that came through was this revelation that like it became really easy for me to see that like okay, Mars and Aries and the first house all share a super common thing. So does like Mercury and the third house and like Gemini and Cancer and the moon and like the fourth house. And so I started to like make this it actually now looks like a periodic table of, of elements, but I started to make this thing, I call it the pillars, this pillar system. And it's a column, 12 columns, right? And across the top of them, I have these themes. You could say it's a theme. And each theme is associated with a sign, a house, and a planet and an aspect. Because what I saw was like, oh, wait, Aries, Mars, the first house, ah, the conjunction too has this thing going on. And I started to look at charts and be like, what happens if we just divide this whole fucking thing evenly? Like we have 12 houses, we have 12 planets. No one argues about that. People get a little wonky around aspects because they say we have what, like the four major aspects and then two minor ones and then a bunch of other minor ones, right? Well, I was like, well, hold on, we actually have 12 aspects. We have 12 aspects, just like we have 12 houses, just like we have 12 signs. The thing about these 12 aspects is there's either opening ones, waxing, or waning aspects. But when you actually like map them out, they're different aspects, making similar angles, but from different places. And I was like, we have 12, 12, and 12. And I was like, hold on, hold on a second here. We got 12 houses, 12 signs, 12 aspects. When you actually look at them divided by 30 degrees, which is the even way to divide a zodiac wheel, but we have 10 planets. And so I was like, something is off. And it brought me back to something that I had felt since the very beginning of my studies at that point, 13 and a half like fucking years prior, which was I never understood ever why Mercury got two signs and why Venus got two signs. And whenever I would ask people, teachers, whatever, educators, people would be like, well, Mercury is fast and it's about exchange and it moves, it's rapid, it's so fast, it goes between. So that's why. And I was like, well, that just sounds like Mercury doing Gemini things, but all right. Uh, and then this same different when I would ask about Venus and people are like, well, she balances. So, so she can balance the other side. And I was like, okay, but that just sounds like her doing a Libra thing. So like, what are we doing here? But I was a brand new baby in astrology. So I was like, I don't know shit. Like, I know I don't know shit. So obviously, I just don't get it yet. And if I keep studying, it's going to make sense. And so I did. And eventually, it didn't. And eventually, it didn't. And I was like, okay, there's got to be more order to astrology than that. And that's when, maybe a year or two into like studying, I was like, ugh, I need something more solid. And that's when I found Hellenistic astrology, ancient astrology, traditional. And they used some different systems, but they were fucking covered in rules. And I loved that. I was like, yes, there is structure. There are boundaries. There is a successful way and a right way to like be conducting this stuff. And it's not as willy-nilly silly as just kind of pop astrology when you wander your way in to, most of us get our entrance through pop astrology and then we're just kind of like, wow, some of this makes sense and some of this doesn't. What the fuck makes, like, we got to make it make sense to ourselves. So that's when I started doing Hellenistic astrology. And the real, like, the true primary reason I made that switch was because it answered the question for me, that original fucking question, which was like, why did these guys get two but everyone else has one? In Hellenistic and traditional astrology, every planet has two signs except for the sun and the moon, who each get one, which they are, the idea is like, oh, they're luminaries. That's why they each get their own. And I was like, yeah, I can get on board with that. And I did. And I practiced Hellenistic for like 7 or 8 years of my practice. After that, I switched from Placidus to whole sign. I switched my entire practice. I really went in deep with that. And then like fast forward, and then I had the download for psychological astrology. And then I went to that, went through a whole dismantling process with that because that professor hated Hellenistic and traditional astrology. So like there was a whole dismantling where I was like, I can't believe I'm gonna fucking switch my system. I can't believe it. Like I've been practicing this way, and oh my god, what does this say about me if I'm wrong about how I'm practicing? And oh my god, I taught people, and now I'm gonna change my. And like I had it. That was when Pluto was square my Mercury. And my Ceres. So it was like literally like dismantle the thing that you've been using to that you've been relying on to mentally navigate the world around you. But then I fell in love with astropsychology. And so fast forward to back where we were here, suddenly I was like, oh, we're missing these fucking planets. We've been missing planets because I was like, had been doing this jumping fucking process around because I was like, there's something off about the symmetry here. There's something off about the symmetry. And so when I was like, oh, 12, 12, 12, 10, it became so clear to me that we just needed to shift our awareness of something. And so that led me into like, well, who gets what? I mean, I knew it was Virgo and Taurus that didn't feel like they had, what's the right word? Adequate, competent, like 100% accurate matches for them. And so the first thing I did was with Virgo, I was like, well, who could it be? Who would who does the Virgo thing? Like functionally as a planetary force. And so Chiron popped up in my brain. And I didn't use Chiron. I, in fact, explicitly chose not to use Chiron because I hated the way people interpret it. I was like, it doesn't feel right. And that's like a really common theme for me. Something doesn't feel right. It's this intuitive thing. And that harkens back to like, I didn't trust my intuitive gut punches from youth, remember? So anyway, I was like, Chiron didn't feel right to me ever before. And I was like, well, wait a second. What if we just misinterpreted it? Like, what if we just looked at the wrong parts of it? And so I was like, maybe let me just go back to the myth. Let me go back to the mythology. That's source material and like reread it. And so I did. And it's clear to see why everyone thinks Chiron is the wounded healer. They tell you that in his myth. They straight up say, this is Chiron, the wounded healer. He
Mhm.
hurts a lot and never heals, but people like him because he's helpful, you know? And so my issue with that was like I refused to believe that there was, and this is also in part of why I left Hellenistic astrology eventually. I was like, this shit is not fatalistic and this shit is not deterministic. And to have a whole and like essence, a whole planetary force dedicated to being a scapegoat didn't feel right to me. I was like, okay, so you're telling me that like you suffer a whole fuck ton and all you get out of it is being of service to other people, like, which is like there's nothing wrong with that obviously, but it felt like the integrated ends of how it was being presented did not equal and opposite to the unintegrated ends of it to me. And so when I went back to the mythology, I was like, well, let me just like see what is he objectively doing? Like what is the function Chiron is partaking in the myth? And like they tell you, yes, he got shot with the arrow. Yes, he got hurt. Yes, the gods wouldn't let him die. They tell you that, but what he's actually doing in his mythology is fixing things. And he's a tutor. He's a facilitator. He's a practitioner. He is learning a craft and he got that immortal wound not because like it was some punishment for like, oh, wrong place, wrong time, buddy. That sucks to suck. It's like, no, no, no. This is a wound he can't heal, and therefore he spends eternity practicing and honing and crafting and improving and like getting better to make it work better, to make him work better. And in that process, he ends up being a truly a facilitator and a tutor to like the young god heroes who are right like Achilles and his buddies, right? Like they send the gods would send their heroes to Chiron to teach them how to practically apply technique. That's what was happening, and that and over and over and over and over and over and over again in his story. And at the end when he finally was released because he volunteered to take Prometheus's spot and get his liver pecked out for eternity, it was when he volunteered to be of use and of service that the gods are like, our man, you're free. You're good. Good job. And so like the whole story is a story of service and craftsmanship. And I was like, oh my God, that's Virgo. I mean, like that's Virgo. That's the sixth house. Like that's what the opening quincunx also carries that tone too. And so it was really clear to see that. And then of course I was like, okay, myths are cool, but like, how is this in practice? And use myself as a guinea pig, of course, as one does. And I have Chiron in Cancer in the ninth house. and it is conjunct my south node. And so I was like, okay, step out of myself for a second, Laurel, which having a bunch of Aquarius makes that possible sometimes. And I was like, okay, objectively, if I were the client walking in and I saw this chart, what would I say? What kind of statements would I make about this, assuming what I am hypothesizing about is true? And I was like, okay, objectively, this would be a person that would be looking to, like, would intuitively diagnose problems, Cancer, Chiron, but intuitively diagnose problems with things like belief or interpretation or meaning making. And then I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Wait a second. You mean they would critique and adjust and try to correct
Yeah.
how we interpret spiritual or emotional or intuitive information? Like, what? I was like, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it right now. I'm literally doing it right now. And then I was like, okay, started to apply it with clients. It was hitting every time. I applied the same procedure to Ceres, who is lumped in with the asteroids. And she, to me, I was like, that one makes the most sense. And I went back to myths, okay, because like to figure out who ruled Taurus, I was like, let me go through that same process. Let me go through the myths. And so I found Ceres and I was like, okay, I didn't use her either in my practice because I didn't use the asteroids. And so I read her stuff. I'd heard of her before, but like everything I read about her was like, oh, that's that like second moon. She's like a second moon. She's like kind of like like can't like they kept giving her cancer shit. And I was like, that's no, the moon has that on lock. Like Cancer has that on lock. Like we don't need a second moon. We have the moon. Like why would we do that? So I knew there was something off. And I have Ceres on my ascendant. I mentioned, right? I have her on my ascendant. And I never identified with like this mommy thing that they kept trying to put on her. And I was like, no, if she's on my ascendant, I think I would know that. Like I think that I would be able to see the way that I engage the world would have those sorts of undertones, and it just didn't. And so I was like, nah. But when I went to her myth, Ceres is also known as Demeter, who is the mother of Persephone. So if you're familiar with the Persephone myth, Persephone and Hades, who is also known as Pluto, have a whole thing where Pluto came and he stole Persephone, who is the daughter of Ceres slash Demeter, and took her to the underworld. And Ceres slash Demeter was the goddess of the harvest. Okay, she was the goddess of like food and
Yeah.
shit. And she said, not my daughter, you bitch. She's mine. I need her. And so she and Hades got in a big tiff. And long story short, their myth ended with us receiving seasons because she and Pluto had to negotiate, and Pluto got Persephone half of the year, and that's winter, fall, winter. And then Ceres got Persephone the other half of the year, spring and summer, which is where we have like cycles and seasons, which is another thing that I think is very associated with the Tauran second house energy. And I was like, okay, this is really hard to deny. And then when you actually like again read the myth and not what is just told to you in the myth, I'm not saying she didn't love her daughter Persephone, but I'm saying that it wasn't about being a mom. It was about depending on something to to be able to get the thing done, right? It was more about Persephone being a dependent of something that Ceres relied upon. She couldn't do her harvest tasks without her daughter's help. So it was like, oh, this is a very much like, no, she's mine. She's mine, and I need her if I'm going to, survive. Finger quotes, we're going to say survive because, like, otherwise there is no spring and there is no survival, right? So this became a very life and death thing, and it speaks to the opposition between Taurus and Scorpio in general, the access. And so, anyway, I was like, Oh, okay, so like possession. Let me look at this planet as like a planetary force of all things Taurus. So everything that we would give the Venus side of Taurus or the Taurus side of Venus, I was like, well, let me just like extract that and just like plop that into Ceres and see if it works. Let me just see if it works. And it did. The obviously in my own chart, it I was able to like pull it together pretty quickly. But I was like, okay, if this planet represents the Taurus things I think it does, then we're gonna see it show up very, very prominently in the charts of wealthy people, super wealthy people. We're gonna see it show up in the charts of like environmentally oriented people, food oriented people, et cetera, et cetera. And so I started to like do case studies like I did with Chiron. And the first case study I did for Ceres, I was like, all right, if this bitch is really the money mama, like I think she might be, then let me think of like rich ass fuckers because it'll show up there. And if it doesn't show up there, then I'm off. Then I'm off, you know? Um, and so the first person I thought of was not like the current batch of billionaires, but it was actually I was like, who's the original billionaire? I think of like the original OG guy. And JP Morgan popped into my head.
But
And I was like, yeah, the billionaire before billionaires. You know, he bailed out. In my research, I learned he bailed out the US government twice on his own dime. He was the Federal Reserve before we had a Federal Reserve, and is in fact the reason we have one. Because after a private citizen had to bail out a country twice, the country was like, hey, we gotta make sure this doesn't keep happening. He was also a robber baron and a real asshole of a dude. And so I was like, okay, let me look. And so I pull up his chart and he has Ceres at like 26 degrees Aries, and he has his sun at 26 degrees Aries. And I was like, okay, that's about as prominent as it can get when someone's identity is wealth, right? Because that sun is about like who we are, what we validate, what we choose, what we create. And so he had Ceres, who I was like, well, this is a planet that would object, like potentially, hypothetically, have to do with resources, possession, ownership, literally like stability, sovereignty, and a lot of, especially in Aries, like especially in Aries, um, it's very much like a pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of energy, but because it's Ceres and Aries, it has also got this quality about like, I need it, take it. I'll take it then. I'll go out and I'll fucking take what's mine. What I,
reciprocate.
yeah. So I was like, okay. And then from there, I was like, well, it's really going to be hard to knock me off of this one because it was so obvious. It shows up in Trump's chart, it shows up in Elon's chart. I was like, okay, money's not the only thing about this essence, the spectrum. So I thought environmentalist. Ceres is conjunct Greta Thunberg's ascendant, also in Aries. She fights on behalf of anchoring her right to live on the fucking earth, man. You know, and her Ceres is square a bunch of planets in her 10th house, including I think Saturn, which is very much like in conflict with world government. Right? Like there's like in conflict with authority. So there were many other people that I like looked up and it was like totally hits, totally hits, totally hits. And then when I had the my first 5-figure month in my own business, Ceres was conjunct my sun and was transiting my sun at that time. And I was like, okay, like you can't fucking tell me no. And then when obviously I work with clients too, and so they've been able to also validate that. So long, I know I went on like this
I
long
love it.
tangent. I don't even remember what the question was anymore, but part of the podcast was the system. I was like, it was working. And so from not finding, it's not like they didn't exist. I just like twisted again. I just turned the kaleidoscope a little bit and was like, hey, if we look at it a little differently, we can actually like really see some stuff we were missing before. And so from there back to like this periodic table of fucking elements, I was able to be like, oh my God, there's a planet, a sign, a house, and an aspect that all share a source energy. And so I called that source energy the pillars. And so pillar one is Aries, Mars, the first house, and the conjunction. They all are like different members of the same family. They all share the same lineage. They might do the thing a little bit differently or represent a slightly different variable in how something populates or is consciously experienced in a person's life, but what they're ultimately sourcing from is the same thing. And so pillar two is Ceres, Taurus, the second house, and the waxing semi-sextile. And so when you see planets in semi-sextile, they're gonna have kind of a anchor undertone to them. There can feel like there's a pause or a hesitation or a slow down there, buddy, right? But there's a consolidation happening because the essence has to do with the same thing. And so pillar three is like Mercury, Gemini, the third house, the opening sextile. Pillar four, Moon, Cancer, fourth, opening square, right? And so an opening square is different than a closing square in that they're both tense aspects, but they require different solutions or different approaches to navigating them. The opening square, because it has a undertone of the Cancer moon thing, what I call the support pillar, it's going to require acceptance. It's going to require support. It's going to require embrace, and it's going to require safe spaces in which these two planets can work out the thing that they're trying to work out. That's not an opening square is not going to be resolved with discipline. It's going to be resolved with a hug between these energies, you know? So carry on like that through the whole zodiac. Every single pillar has a respective planet, sign, house, and aspect. And so I knew that I was onto something at that point. And then by that point, I was like, oh shit, I did reinvent the zodiac. I didn't mean to, but here it is, and here it happened. And I also knew because of my fears that had been coming up, because of the fears I had since childhood, that if I just went out there and was like, you're doing it wrong, no one was going to listen to me. Like, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I didn't listen when my professor was like, you're doing it wrong. Because he told me that. Like, he was an example of what I don't want to be in a lot of ways, because he was very mean about Hellenistic astrology. He was very mean about other systems. He himself had been, had some really tough reputation processes that he had to move through when he went to an international astrology conference and told the Vedic astrologers that they were basically worshiping like a false fucking system. And I was like, are you kidding me, dude? Are you kidding me, dude? So I knew firsthand, obviously, it was like doing anything like that was not going to be the way. And so remember, I have my Jupiter in Leo conjunct my MC, but it's from the ninth house. And so at this time, Pluto is not just fucking around and being like, yeah, bitch, excavate and empower yourself to accept and nurture a new system of astrology from the roots by going all the way into the microscopic mother fucking shit of like quantum physics, which is again this like I see an Aquarius, Saturn in Aquarius, Moon in Aquarius thing that was Pluto was like ripping wide open. But then the opposition to Jupiter was like, we have to show up. If you want anyone to see the full spectrum, we have to go really deep into the creating and nurturing and birth and the laboring of the system. I mean, and what's crazy is it was literally like a 9 month labor before I felt like I could talk actually about my system. And so it really does feel like, as much as an intellectual creation can feel like a child, right? Like it really did feel like that. But a big part of it was how the hell am I gonna show this? Like, how am I gonna get people to listen and see that there's something real going on here, and this isn't just like willy-nilly silly. There's a lot of logic because everything was really based in either like quantum creation principles or sacred geometry. Because when I took the wheel, oh, I didn't say this earlier, but also one of the other like early logic points of like why I was thinking like it's so weird that Mercury gets uh Gemini and Virgo while Venus gets Taurus and Libra, because on the wheel they're in tense positions to each other themselves, like they're geometrically
Yeah.
not getting along very well objectively, like Gemini and Virgo square. So I was always like, how can Mercury know when to turn it on and turn it off? Like, how does that, like, it just never made sense. I was like, "Oh, okay." And then, um, Taurus and Libra are in quincunx to each other. In my system, I have also decommissioned the rulership schemes. Obviously, I just told you I added these two planets, but I each planet is basically functioning within a resonance. It's really about resonance. My whole system is about resonance. And so, like, it didn't make sense to me that Mercury could be considered in domicile when it was in a square, when it was in Virgo and it was in a square position to this other domicile placement. Because it's like, how the fuck does it know to function? Like it logically just didn't track for me.
Yeah.
And so all of this basically became it all became its own thing. And when I was like, how am I going to introduce this to people? That's kind of like, how do I want to say this? The podcast didn't come immediately after that. The podcast came quite a bit after that. Like I tested the system. I proved that it worked. I had validation from other people. I had mentioned earlier um I wasn't visible at the start of this process. I was very, no one knew me. Like I was very, my little hole, like I'd been building basically in isolation my whole career at that point, which again is like 13 years, you know? And it wasn't until January of 2026, this year, that I actually showed up on Threads and started to test the water there. And it was at first, I mean, I got on Threads at first because no one had seen Stranger Things in my immediate circle and I wanted to talk about it. And then I found there was an astrology community and I was afraid to dissent, to let people know about my dissenting opinions at first, because people on Reddit had been super mean to me. Like people on Reddit can be very mean. And astrologers are mean. I love us, but God, we're mean. Like we really can be fucking snot nose brat sometimes. I say as a snot nose brat sometimes. Um, and yeah, so like I kind of made it wasn't intentional in the moment, but looking back, I'm like subconsciously I see what I was doing, but I didn't share my dissenting opinions at first. I kind of built a small reputation for being reputable, like amongst other reputable astrologers, and then other people, people more like clients or enthusiasts saw that I was engaging successfully with other reputable astrologers, putting forth my own good insights that were people were like, oh yeah, no, that's yeah, good, good, good. You're okay, yeah, no, yeah, you know what you're doing. Cool, cool, cool. And then it was then that I started to dissent. And I started to let out that I don't do everything the way that you all might think I do, that I do things a little bit differently. And in hindsight, I'm like, I was protecting myself. I was completely showing them that I'm not someone to fear, that I do know what I'm talking about, that I do respect the craft, that I do hold it in high integrity, that I care about it deeply, and I care about the other people practicing a lot, like a lot, a lot. Um, and I think part of me hoped that by doing that, when I would start to share my different opinions, that people would be like, "Oh, but we do like her already, so maybe
Yeah.
maybe we'll listen to her." And it worked. And it worked, and people started listening and they started to see maybe there's something to it. And I knew that I couldn't, like, do you see it yet? Do you see it yet? Do you see it yet? Like I knew that it was going to be something that I would just have to really stay committed to the course of demonstrating and showing. And that's on my Jupiter and Leo. Demonstrating is showing that's that Leo, right? It's like, let me illuminate it for you. Come watch. Come validate with your own eyeballs. Applaud, please. Yes, yes, right? Jupiter being teaching. And so fast forward to eventually when the podcast idea dropped and I kept telling myself I couldn't go forward with it because like I have to build out my offer ecosystem and I have to like really nail down like the community I'm building and I have to like do this and I have to do this. And my brand strategist Veronica was like, no, you don't. Just start this podcast, girl. Like you keep putting it up on a pedestal. I know it's what you want to do, but you keep making it like a prize. Like you can't work on it until you have X amount of clients or until you have this like seamlessly flowing offer ecosystem thing. And she was like, just do it. It's clearly like you're dying to do it. And I was like, okay. A, a week later, I was interviewing her for one of the episodes, you know. But yeah, so that is kind of like this the long version of like why the system's different. Also, a little bit more about like what makes the podcast different is that we're not just doing this like, wow, it's so cool that your astrology matches your life. It's also like I am demonstrating it through the lens of my system and connecting the dots and showing this to people in a way that they maybe haven't engaged in the chart before. And over the months that I've now been like active on threads and I've been more open about talking about my unique view and my unique approach, the more people have been reaching out to me, sometimes days after, sometimes months after, to be like, I really think you're onto something. I can clearly see it. I can clearly see it happening in my life, especially the Virgo babes have been very grateful to me out loud specifically because they're like, this makes so much more sense to me. Your framing on Chiron makes more sense to me. Taking Mercury out of the equation makes more sense to me. Like the way you're framing all this, like it's making so much stuff click into place because you got to think people with strong Tauran placements or strong Chiron place or strong, I'm sorry, Virgo placements, they weren't looking, in my opinion, they weren't looking at the right chart, the right sign ruler, you know? So of course things were like, yeah, it works if I squint.
It works. Yeah, no, I am mind blown and mesmerized and fascinated. You're definitely onto something. That's not a question. I literally felt like when you were talking, I was getting a download and I'm like, this is the new like 2026 version of Albert Einstein of astrology, the Nikola Tesla of like, I'm not even joking. Like, as you're talking, I can see you just like doing all this stuff, and you're like, I'm not a math girly, but the sacred geometry and it's like, yes, you've got it. I definitely, even myself, would love to learn more now that you've even shared more in depth. Because everything that you're saying makes sense to me. And I don't know if that's my Taurus moon and my Virgo South Node Capricorn 10th house, all of that mixed together, what? But it's just I'm fascinated and I can't wait to hear more and learn more. We're getting like we have like 15 minutes. We're getting to the end, so I want to squeeze in a couple more things too.
Totally.
And I would love to talk to you again. There's so many things that I want to talk to you about. You're fascinating. You're so entertaining. You should definitely be a storyteller as well. But another thing I wanted to ask you. So when we were talking about, you mentioned this about your professor, and then just you having like dissenting opinions, your own opinions, wounds around just your intelligence and speaking up. When it comes to astrology, because you studied Hellenistic, what are your thoughts on Vedic? If you
I
feel
think
it.
that I think it's a very valid system.
Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest takeaways from my massive amounts of download, I never really, let me say it like this. I didn't really engage with Vedic before my downloads because I didn't grow up on Vedic. I really looked at it as like one of those things like dialect. I look at a lot of astrology like a dialect. Like it's like, oh, I didn't learn that language growing
Yeah,
up,
absolutely.
but I can see why that language works for other people. What I've come since having these profound revelations around astrology functioning itself as a quantum equation of co-creation, where your individual awareness is engaging with the collective intelligence around you, is that because it's quantum in nature, all that matters is how you're looking at it. All I mean, not I mean, there's plenty of other things that matter too, but like the perspective is so much of it, right? It's literally like, well, how is it framed up in your awareness? which is in my system very pillar 12, the awakening pillar, which is Uranus and Aquarius in the 11th house, and the waning sextile, all have this quality of awareness and of perspective and being able to be objective or remove detached in a sense, right? And so I think that because I never saw a problem with Vedic astrology. I never had a problem with it. I ran my chart Vedic one time and it was like I'm a Pisces sun, a Capricorn moon, and a Virgo rising, and I was like, I don't know who that person is. Like, I respectfully don't know them. Like, at all. Like, I'm Aries, Aquarius, Libra, So I was like, I don't think that's it. But but no, thank you. I think I'll stay Western. And so but I didn't care if other people were practicing it. Like, I never got on any high horse about it. And then now it's like, duh, because it's literally a quantum study. So like how you perceive it's going to work. And what I've really come to is like, you can use any system of astrology as long as it has rules that work within its self-organized system, because astrology itself is a self-organized complex quantum system. And so as long as the rules you're abiding by work without conflict and produce accurate results, the system works, you know? And yeah, so I feel that way about a lot of different things. Unfortunately, this has made politics a complicated thing for me sometimes. I am strong in my opinions, very strong in my convictions. But when it comes to like arguments, I'm like, oh man, but I can see that everything's perspective, and therefore I can see why other people's wrong
Mhm.
perspectives, why they're so attached to them, or how they came to these conclusions. Like it is it's a gift of this work, is being able to see perspectives, I think. And I get on a big old fat soapbox about other astrologers being mean to other astrologers about different systems, because it's not for you to tell someone else what's going to work best for them. It's not any astrologer's job. And this kind of extends into my philosophy about my craft and how I like to work with my clients. Like, it is not my job to tell you who to be
Mhm.
at all. And it's not my job to tell you that you should be someone based on what some old fucking dead men from thousands of years ago had to say either. Like, you tell me who you are and I help you connect the dots in a way that's going to provide clarity and insight and agency to you, because this, like, if you are living your life, it is true to the astrology. It's just about which part of the spectrum you're landing on within the astrology. So yeah, I love the people who practice Vedic and like understand that it's all good. I love people who practice Western understand like it's cool. We can have different ways of getting, or it's really just like different ways of looking at the same energy.
I definitely believe that and agree with that. And here we are again. I agree, but I really do. I started out with Western astrology, and I've always, I know those placements by heart, all of that. And then I decided one day, same thing. I'm going to look at my Vedic chart. And for me, it was the opposite. It was like, whoa, this is more
Mm.
of who I am. But then I kind of found, like you did now, I haven't gone down the rabbit hole in the depth that you have, but I found that, you know what? I kind of blend the two because for me, mostly Vedic works, and then I throw in some Western stuff, And so
Mhm.
then I'm like you, I'm an open book. I'm able to see other people's perspectives. And so I don't like to do the black and white thing. I kind of do like to live in the gray, which is maybe a backwards thing to say to some. Because I feel like it helps you have way more curiosity. You can question things, you can open your mind to things, and you can understand more. And so it's great to kind of maintain that perspective. But like you said, as long as you're having a guidance and like some rules to follow, and it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to take this and take that and we're going to make it something, and it's like
Yes.
that's a mess.
That's a mess, and
Because you're
that's where
not
the
getting real.
line needs to be drawn.
Yeah,
And
you're
there
not
are
getting
lots of
real.
people who do that.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
No, you're fine. But when you do that, you're not, there's no system now. And so then you're just, you're having random loose interpretations that you're giving to someone. And then if they're looking for some kind of self awareness to find support, whatever it may be, look for clarity, you're just causing confusion. So I think it's definitely important to kind of stay open-minded, but still within a lane to an extent. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Because it can't just be willy-nilly silliness. That's pop astrology. Like that
Exactly.
is the shit that it's like serves a purpose, and that purpose is not letting astrology die out from the mainstream. But it does a lot of harm, and just willy-nilly silly taking stuff from these different systems. It would be the same thing if a fucking doctor
Yeah.
just was like, you know what? I'm going to take some from this treatment and from this treatment and from that treatment, and let's see how it goes. Which I'm not saying there isn't value in doing that. I mean, obviously, I did interdisciplinary thinking.
Yeah.
My business is called, or my I didn't even mention what like my branch of astrology. My found I guess I don't know what to call it. I guess it's a branch because I will end up like teaching it
Mhm.
like evolutionary astrology or Vedic astrology or hell it is. I call mine soul arc astrology, and the ARC stands for awareness, resonance, and creation, because those are the principles that soul arc is built upon. It is about like if you can understand the astrological, having astrological awareness of what the spectrums are that you're dealing with, of like what the blueprint is or what the syllabus is, then understanding where we psychologically are integrating and resonating with the the possibilities of those astrological spectrums. And then from there, we consciously create, or we can quantumly create, because how you observe is going to be rooted in how you, like, what you're psychologically resonating with, which is going to determine, like, what perspective you're taking to the events around you and how you see them as they unfold around you, which is going to determine how you act, what actions you take, what choices you make, which is obviously going to, in turn, create reality and have reality respond back to you. And so, it's to me just so important to be able to back up your system, like have your own system, do your own fucking thing, be an innovator, but make sure there's logic, like, because people are going to come and they're going to be like, what the fuck,
Yeah.
what's your logic? And I have like a bunch of shit I can show them and be like, well, here's my logic, and here's my logic, and here's this time that I like one time during February, that February where you were like, you must have been going crazy. And I was like, I think it was. There was one time where I like took a quantum particle diagram and like superimpose astrology upon it. So I was like connecting and drawing parallels between like the fucking like neurons and like electrons and all kind and like all the like little tiny tinies. I was like, looking up and learning the way that they functioned in a cell, and was like, that thing is doing the thing that a house does. That thing is doing the thing that an aspect does. That thing is like always in motion like a planet. Like, oh my God. And started to like draw that. And so it's like, if you have the logic and you have the rationale behind you, I have like the sacred geometry. So it's like people are like, what? You can't just make stuff up. I'm like, I'm not. I'm not. I'm connecting dots. So that's chill. Do that. Create new systems. This shit needs to be innovated. We can't, all ologies. This isn't just for astrology. This is also for numerology, herbology, like cardology, whatever ology you're working with. They all need to be innovated. They all need to be updated. They all need disruptors in those fields. And don't be like, take it from me, don't be afraid to be that disruptor if you really see something and it doesn't let you go. Like it was 14 years of me like being like, no, I just don't get it yet. No, I just don't get it yet. Before I was like, okay, I'm gonna fucking get this motherfucking thing. Like, I'm going to figure this out. And now it's giving birth to this whole new way of engaging with the birth chart, not just as like this personality prison, but of this prism of like potential. And that is such an important thing, I think, not just for our studies and our crafts, but I think for the collectiveness of human consciousness. We can start to show people like, hey, this isn't just like woo woo, but there's a lot of deep logic and ration that goes into these practices. Then I think we'll be able to like raise the collective understanding and resonance just across the board with things that have like literally nothing to do with the spiritual sciences, you know?
What can you say? Can you speak to what you learned about conviction through the process of creating your pillars?
Oh, what a great question that is. Yeah. Ugh. Oh, I learned, I haven't been asked that question before. That's why it's so good. What did I learn about conviction? I learned a lot about separating. This is going to sound a little bit weird, but I learned a lot about separating the art from the artist in a lot of ways. I mentioned my professor and how, although I can't stress enough how grateful I am to have been in his classes and to have learned from him, because if it were not for his system that he created, it wouldn't have given me the it wouldn't have filled in enough of the blanks for me to be able to use it as a jumping board into my own. But one of the things I had learned from him was how to separate the art from the artist, if you will. He was a nice man, but he was also an old white man, you know? So there were a lot of things about him where he would stand in his convictions while he was teaching us. And I would be like, read the fucking room, dude. It's a room full of women, and some of us are POC, bruh. And yeah, he would like use Elon Musk's chart to demonstrate like what a great, fabulous, innovative man. And I was like, oh, we're gonna ignore that Uranus can also be controversy.
Yeah.
Okay, neat. Um, but I couldn't deny the things he was teaching and the way that he stood on his interpretations of the craft, even though his personal interpretations of things I didn't like. And so I think I low key learned a lot from via contrast, if you will, from that process, because he did get ousted by the community in a lot of ways. That was my number one fear. And I was like, okay, well, he did that. He still stands on his shit. He still gets students. Obviously, I'm sitting in here, you know, and so it taught me a lot that like you can really accomplish something amazing and be really enmeshed into that process and really like part of that process. And you have to be if you're going to birth something new, especially something new in a gatekeepy field without regulation. But it also taught me to not be so convicted that you aren't open to hearing other ways of being, you know, because I also remember I had tried to approach him with my system when it was downloading. And I thought, oh my God, somebody more educated than I am on these subjects might be able to help me connect these dots better. And he wouldn't hear me out. And so I learned a lot because he was so convicted. And so it was like I was almost like able to, through my engagements with him, I was almost able to see like the whole spectrum of what that looked like, and was able to like take an osmosis in some of those lessons, because it really hurt my feelings that he would not hear me out about Chiron. And instead of like actually ever having the conversation, even though I asked for it and I wrote out a whole big email to him about it, and he kept saying, I'll get to it, I'll respond soon, I'll respond soon. What he did manage to do was find the time to write an article about how people will keep trying to force other planets into perfectly existing systems. And I inspired that article for him. And so I'm not sure if I'm answering your question super well, but like to me, that just seems like there was a lot in that experience that taught me how to stand on your motherfucking shit and how to know when when it's unnecessary, you know? Like I don't need to I don't it's funny because this is kind of like a new thing for me, but I don't feel like I need to prove it anymore the way I used to. It's like, no, I've set up a million ways that you can watch this happen, and I'm firm that this works. It feels like a little like like the Leonardo DiCaprio fucking but like ever since I have these downloads and I started implementing, I haven't missed. Like there's just been zero misses. I've had zero people be like that doesn't make sense or I don't resonate. I've only had people be like, that's interesting, I have to think about it, and then come back and be like, wow, this really changes the way that I'm looking at things now. And so a lot of this has taught me to like, when you see it, trust that, trust yourself. If it won't let you go, again, it's like I kept saying to myself, don't interrupt the wheel. And then the grip it had on me of like, well, you never thought that those things matched, and like this could be a way, just like wouldn't let me go. And so ultimately, I think that when it comes to the conviction, you have to understand to a certain extent, like if it's there, it's meant to be there. It's there for a reason. It's likely because there's something trying to come through you. And the reason it's even chosen you to come through is because you're primed for it. You have spent your life preparing to receive it, or preparing to educate on it, or stand on it, right? And so yeah, I think that that's a lot of what I've learned. I actually learned a lot about conviction, it turns out.
Yeah, you just gave me the whole spectrum, actually. You answered that beautifully because you showed what it means to stand on your conviction, but also the negative side of what that does too, and then learning from both, So I think that's amazing, because we also too don't always need the validation. And I think that was maybe a lesson for you there where, you were already struggling with like, I don't want to be ousted, I don't want to come in and step on toes, like all of these things. But then I think what happens is when you stand in your truth and your conviction, what you believe, what's chasing you down, you get rewarded in the end because look what's being reflected back to you now. You know what I mean? Like podcast is already doing amazing, like all of these things. And so it's like the work isn't for nothing. And instead of being fearful and, oh, well, I'm not really one to be seen and all of these things, look at it unfold. It's always progress over perfection, is what I say. So,
That's fucking right. That is 100% right. I remember my college cap. You know how you decorate caps, people decorate the caps. I remember mine, I made it say passion breeds progress. And you just reminded me of that. And now like as I sit here on the cusp of my Leo Jupiter return, I'm like, wow, it really is breeding progress. It's breeding community. And that feels like a piece that was missing from my life for so long, was having a really strong astrology community, because I was different. I saw things differently. And so people didn't like,
yeah.
other astrologers didn't want to engage that much, or they, at least on the platforms I'd previously been on.
Well,
So it's
you've
like,
got it and you're going to continue to have it.
exactly. Now it does feel like, oh no, it's almost like, again, hindsight's 2020, and it really is, where you are like, why aren't I going viral? Like, why doesn't anyone see me? Like, no. And it's like, oh, I didn't even have the shit that I was gonna bring to the table yet. Like, it's good that no one saw me then. Like, it's good that I had this time to falter around and test and play and whatever, and so yeah, it's been really wild. It's really cool to like be present on the roller coaster and be aware of it, and like watching it unfold and just trying to take it like one day at a time. But I really do think that this is going to be a really fun way, this podcast, this system, to uplift the community, to help people connect the dots in ways they haven't previously seen before, that can really help them make informed decisions. Because at the end of the day, that's all I want. I want people to be making choices that they feel confident about, and that they feel, even if it's like hard stuff going on, because like life's hard. Earth is a tough place to be. But if you can provide context around, I like to call it the context cushion, it creates a lot of clarity, and you can weather a lot more when you just understand the interconnected dynamics that are happening beneath it.
Yeah, that's definitely the truth. Astrology literally saved my life, but I'll share that story on your show later.
I
But
can't wait to have you on.
it'll be so fun. So I want to thank you so much. We're kind of getting to the end. So I want to thank you so much. You are so fascinating. I really, truly want to do this again.
Let's do it again.
Yes, absolutely. And then if you want to share where people can find you, about the podcast, the 12 pillar system, if they can be a part of that, how all of that goes.
Absolutely. So you can find me on threads at astro_Aries. On Instagram, I'm Soul Arc ARC_astrology. And my website is soularcastrology.com. And yeah, the podcast, you can find it everywhere. I think it's on Apple, it's on Spotify. I do have a YouTube as well, so you can watch it. And that's actually like, yeah, listen to it, but watch it on YouTube because most of the guests have given me permission to have their birth charts displayed. So you can actually see the charts as we're talking about them. You can see these placements. So it's been a great way for some folks to like, I've had a couple people message me and be like, I'm taking notes. I have a notebook specifically for your podcast. And I sit down and I take notes and I like watch the script. And so that's been really cool. So follow us there on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Apple at Made for This with Laurel Kassor, Astrology from Abstract to Impact. And yeah, I think that's all the places you can find me. I work one-on-one with people. I do readings. I specifically love working with other spiritual entrepreneurs, creatives, and educators so we can really like connect the dots for them on how their soul syllabus has been their market research their entire life. And so, yeah, that's how you find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for
And
having
bless
me.
Jupiter and Leo for you.
Thank you. And for you as well. And y'all come listen to Elise's episode on my podcast too once that airs.
Awesome. Thank you, Laurel. Talk soon. Bye bye.